Today we're going to talk about Power Apps modern themes and controls. And the modern controls look much nicer than the classic controls. And based on that, people get excited about the modern controls and themes. But let's discuss the different things that you might want to think about before using them in a project. So they've been out for about a year, give or take a few months. And they do look nice and elegant. However, there's been a lot of complaints on the functionality. We don't have as many properties as we do with the classic ones, but I think they're here to stay. And I think we should continue to talk about the modern controls and themes because they're just going to get better over time. And eventually, those are the ones that you're going to use probably primarily. And I hope that if the classic controls go away, the classic theming could definitely go away. Um, I don't think that was too great of a theming system that we had with the classic theming, and never really used it. But the modern theming, I hope that they improve that as well. And we've seen some of that here just recently, which we'll talk about. But as long as time allows, I'd like to go through a lot of these modern controls, and I'll give you my thoughts on the new theming system. And as always, when we're here live on a Saturday morning, I'm going to keep an eye on the comments. I'm going to interact with you guys. So in a lot of cases, this live stream content can be driven much by the feedback that I'm getting here live. So uh, I see Juan on, and I think that would perhaps with the colon before and after, that's probably an emoji of some type there. Glad you're with me, Juan. And I also see Akan. Hello to you. Yeah. So let me know your thoughts about the modern controls and themes as we go along. And the first thing that I want to talk about today are any settings currently that we have to set up before using them. And then the themes won't, the modern theming won't take that long to go over, but there are some really good, interesting things to discuss. And probably the rest of this session, we'll be talking about those individual controls. And I'd like to talk about them not in alphabetical order, but rather in the order that they're most exciting, in my opinion. And also, I'm going to be looking at your feedback here in the chat. So if there's a modern control that you would like discussed in detail, or what is the modern control that you were most excited about, please let me know in the comments. Okay. So we'll say theming, then controls. Very good. Yeah. Good morning and hello to you guys. I did get a late start today, and then I was ready to go on time at 10 a.m. And then I had some technical issues with my camera here, and I know you guys like to see me in 4K, and I'm saying that facetiously because my face really doesn't matter here, right? But yeah, I had to do a reboot, which took some time, so a little bit of a late start, but that doesn't mean that this won't be an exciting live stream and some good content. Power apps being the topic, not me. All right, and Mike is here from Boston. Hello, Mike. And Salman, hello to you as well. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to make myself smaller. The real star of the show is Power Apps. Okay, and all right, so the first thing I'm going to do is go into the settings here. All right, and Microsoft, either I'm just getting old and I have a senior moment when I come in here. You guys may not think I look very old. I'm very close to 50, and people say, "Oh, you don't look 50 yet." I'm like, "Well, I feel like it on the inside." um, Microsoft does move these settings around, and so you might expect them to be in display. I think right now they're over here in the updates. And look at this. Now I am using a tenant that releases the new features early. So just sort of keep that in mind. Um, I believe that's a good choice on my part, going forward, because if you guys see any new features here on my screen, what's nice about that, what's a positive side of that, is that it's just a matter of maybe a week or two, and you'll be seeing those new features. So if the order and the options here are different than yours, hopefully you'll see those shortly in your environment. Now, if you're on a government tenant, you guys get a few releases behind. I know because I was working for the state of Florida, and I remember we never got the new features. It was always months away. And then if you work on a different level of government, let's say Department of Defense or something, I think that you guys are even further behind. So just in case you work for a government entity, and if you didn't know it before, you may not see the new features quite as soon as the commercial tenants would. Okay, so I'm here in the updates tab, and I'm on the, it looks like they've added a new tab. So um, we got preview, experimental, retired. I believe we've had those for a while. Now I see a new, I see a new tab here called new. Okay, and we have modern controls and themes enabled by default now. Okay, very, very nice. I just wanted to make sure those were turned on before we talk too much about this. And yeah, Mike Gillis, it looks like he's confirming that point that government tenants do get things later down the road. Okay, so I've got a blank screen here. Now, I want to talk about um, obviously the modern theming. I'm going to go full screen here. And let's go to this hamburger. That is actually a technical term, those three lines there. And I was being funny and facetious, but that's actually what it's called, those three lines. And also, so that's a hamburger, and this is a waffle. So that's proof that the internet is hungry, uh, and everyone likes hamburgers and waffles and ice cream, um, or at least waffles and cheeseburgers. So we're going to click on this. We're going to go down to themes. And these are the themes that we have to choose from. Now, this is one of the downfalls I think the classic theming system had, which it gave you a set of themes. In fact, the classic theming gave you, I think, something around 15 or 20, and now we're just looking at 8. But thankfully, somebody over at Microsoft had a flash of brilliance. Let's give them the ability to create a new theme. And it looks like my camera is frozen here. And I am going to try to fix that. It's of no surprise. We live in an imperfect world here. And let's see if I can fix myself. All right. And I might actually tweak the lighting a little bit. No, there we go. And Mike says, I'd like to see the code view. We don't have that feature yet. Oh my goodness, that is an amazing feature. And I love talking about that. So we'll make that a little bit of a not a side topic that we do later, but something that we'll sort of discuss as we go through, Mike, because I really do believe that that is an amazing feature, and everyone should know about it because it really takes our app development to a new level. It really does. So we'll discuss that as the stream goes on as well. Okay, so here I have the ability to create a theme. And this is a new feature that we got recently, perhaps this or last week, which is we can lock the primary color. What I found a huge drawback to using the modern theming and creating your own theme is I can open up this theme. Like, let's say I wanted to make a copy or duplicate this, it just tweak it a little bit. That seems like that would be a really good use case. You know, I can't duplicate this. I can't, so what I did was I took a screenshot. I used an eyedropper and I got the exact shade of the blue I wanted to use. I got the hexadecimal value for the color. And I am going to make one tweak. I just see my laptop struggling to keep up today, even after a reboot. And I've got I wouldn't say it's a top of the line by any means, but it's an Alienware laptop. And I'm sort of expecting it to sort of keep up. And I've got an option to put it in overdrive, which will overclock the CPU, GPU, I believe the memory as well. And hopefully it can keep up a little better now. But the consequence to that is I hear a bunch of fans turn on. Hopefully you guys don't hear the fans as well. But I would use an eyedropper tool to get the exact hexadecimal. I'd come in here. In fact, you know what? I think I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to use my trusty print screen tool here called Snagit. And I know you can take screenshots without a tool like that, but the Snagit tool, which is a paid tool, it's not free, unfortunately, but it has so many features that I like, I'm willing to pay for it. And a lot of the organizations that I've worked for, they typically get the licensing for everybody because I think it really increases the performance of the productivity when you're trying to do things. So right now I'm trying to use an eyedropper tool to get that exact color. Of course, this is off screen for the moment. And there is an eyedropper tool. So let's say I wanted this. I'm going to hover my cursor over here. I'm going to zoom in for you as well. Let's say I'm looking for, see those 4 shades? I've got the Power Apps theme selected, and there's 4 colors there, okay? And what I'm doing, so there's the lightest to the darkest of the 4, and I'm getting the one right before the darkest, okay? The second from the end. And I've got that. I've got the hexadecimal color. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come back to Power Apps. I'm going to create a theme on that, and I'm going to paste the hexadecimal value there. And I'm going to call this Darren's Blue. Okay. Now, what you'll notice if you go down here, before, I always noticed that this color was a bit faded, quite a bit, actually. Now this almost looks right on, but before they add it, now this is a feature that you've got to click into. Okay, the generated palette may not meet contrast ratio. Okay, so I think that's what was going on before, is even though that you had the exact hexadecimal that you wanted to use here, it always wanted to perhaps change it, give you a different shade, because they were worried about the what's called accessibility for those with disabilities, to make sure there's enough contrast. So by turning this on, it's telling you, hey, it's on you to to make sure that you meet accessibility requirements. So if you work for a government entity, at least here in the United States, you have to adhere to accessibility standards. And I think it's a good idea too, because you want to include as many people as possible using your application, using your website, so on and so forth, and make it accessible for everybody, even with disabilities. So I am going to click Create, and I've got this Darren's Blue. And what's interesting about this, I went with this color right there. You see my cursor hovering over that? That's the hexadecimal value that I did use. And it almost looks dark. This one looks darker than that, which I don't know. It still sort of leaves me a little perplexed. If you're going to set up something, whenever you work with an application and theming, you want to have complete control over shades of colors because it has to adhere to style guides for the organization that you're working with. So it's very important. So I don't know if there's some more kinks and issues to work out here or what, but I'm going to add a control over, let's say a button. Okay. And if I were to change this to the Power Apps theme, I think I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit here to make everything easier to see. I do see some comments coming in, and I will catch up on the comments just here in a moment. Okay. Now, if I change the theme, I expected it to go with this blue color, and this color and this color look the same. Now, if I go to purple, obviously it's going to change to that purple. Let's use one that is very obvious. I think this green might be a good example. Notice that I think it's probably using this second because it's not that dark. So what I'm going to do is going to try to create a theme based on this darkest color. How about that? And I'm going to snag just this. And I like to get to the bottom of this because I think although it may not be an exciting topic of talking about hexadecimal codes and being exactly right on that, it's very important when you're doing an app. You know, people are going to hold you accountable to something as simple as a hexadecimal code. Because it's a big deal for organizations. You know, they come up with a theme and marketing materials go out. Their branding, a lot of money is spent in branding and marketing, and it all aligns with a particular style, a theme. And even though you try to use that exact theme, Power Apps messes with it and doesn't give you the exact color that you're telling it to. It's going to cause problems for you. All right. So, all right. I am going to use my eyedropper tool on the very darkest green there. Use that. Okay, I'm going to come back here to Power Apps. I'm going to create a new theme, and I'm going to call this Darren's Green. And the darkest green color is this one. Okay, and that does look like a nice dark green. Now, if I go down here, you notice that look at the difference between this color. This is a really, now of course it's a little extra dark because I have a dialog box open. But this is a faded version of that dark green. Even if it went with this, like a lesser or a lighter shade of it, it still looks faded. So if I turn this on, do you see that? Now it makes it nice and dark green. So I am so thankful they put that in there. Okay, so there we go. Now if I went with regular green, even though my green was based on this darkest color, so it begs the question, what when we pick one of these standard themes, which shade is it using? And I think it's apparent what it's doing is it's using a shade of a hex value that is best for accessibility. Okay. And I don't see any problem right here, right now with the contrast because we have white and we've got the green there. So I'm going to pause there, make sure we're up to date on the comments. And Jeremy asked what length in the imperative part of using the Power FX? What language? Is it similar to other languages? Yes, absolutely. So the Power FX language is similar, I would say, to JavaScript and a few other things. I think what they were trying to do was create a language, a syntax that was very Excel-like, but as ubiquitous as possible. And JavaScript is, people are very familiar with JavaScript. Perhaps it's the first language that somebody comes across when they're trying to learn how to be a web developer, work on a website. In a way, it's sort of like C Sharp, Java. You know, we've got curly braces. It is case sensitive, but it uses operators that we're used to in Visual Basic. But it also has operators that are similar to JavaScript and other C type of languages. Um, so, for example, um, here in a coding window, I could say, let's say we've got an expression. I'm just going to use underscores for a moment. We've got an expression, and I could say, hey, if that's true or false, and this thing is true or false, this would do an and operation on both of these. And as long as both of them are true, this and operator would return a true. But realize that you could use double ampersands for the same thing. So it is fairly flexible. Okay, it is very flexible. Yeah. So Salm on seems logical. More like JSON themes like SharePoint Online. Snagit is great. Working with the old version is still good. Yeah. Do we need Power Apps Premium? That's a great question. I would say this is probably dependent upon the M365 license that you have. And if you go look at M365 licensing, you'll find that, like, if you have an E5 license, there's some Power Platform licensing that's thrown in there, that's included. So you need to look at that. But you may not have an E5 license. If you want to use premium connectors like Dataverse, you're going to need the premium licensing. Generally speaking, that's $20 a month per user. And yes, that does include the users using your application, unless you're using an environment that is a Dataverse for Teams. So you can get around that requirement, but that does come with a few limitations. So keep that in mind. So the licensing, oh my goodness, it's depends on so much. And I tell people, I could tell you what I know about the licensing, but ultimately at the end of the day, licensing is a legal agreement between you and Microsoft. So there are places called Microsoft Partners that resell Microsoft products and licensing and services. And they're known to be the experts in that. But what I'll tell you is, yeah, it depends on a lot of things. And if you want to use the premium features like Dataverse, and there are some premium controls in here, like this Copilot control here. If you ever see a diamond, that means it's a premium feature and it requires a premium license. Yeah. Hello from Ukraine. Well, hello to you. Max says hi. Yeah. Thanks for joining me this morning, guys. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to go back over here and tell me what questions that you guys have about the modern theming. I am very happy that, number one, they allow us to create our own themes. We can give it a name. We can set the font, so on and so forth. If a special person or a special team over at Microsoft happens to see this, which I doubt they are, but if anybody knows anybody on that team and wants to send them a little clip of this video, we really need, besides a primary color in the shade of the primary color, we need an accent color. I mean, I would contend that we need a neutral, a neutral color. We need a way to specify, hey, this is the background color. So these are the things I build in my templates. I want to have not only the different shades of the primary color, but I want to have the ability to have, what do you call it? An accent color, neutral color, secondary colors, that type of thing. So I would say at least 6 different colors. You want 6 colors? Why do you need 6 colors? Well, I mean, think about the color of the text too. So for each color that you might work with, um, let's say I created a theme that had all these different colors. It just wasn't generated. Okay. Well, this one right here, this darkest green that I'm looking at, if that is a background of a container or a rectangle, and I put a label on there and I want somebody to be able to read the text, talk about accessibility, I would want that to be white. You see this button here? Dark green with a white forecolor. And hopefully you guys don't hear my toddler at the door wanting in. Okay, so, but if I use this light shade, I don't know that I'd want to use black. I probably want to use this shade over here for the text. So whenever I create a theme, I've got, generally speaking, about 5 or 6 different colors, and then I've got a font color or something that would look good, that's got a good contrast there. And then also, I want to give people a light and a dark version or flavor of that theme. So why can't we have all that in the modern theming? I mean, I'm completely fine with it. I'm gonna create a theming system for me, my viewers, and my my customers that buy my templates to have all that. But if Microsoft had all that included, we wouldn't have to do all that. It would just be inside, built in to this platform, and we wouldn't have to extend it. But we, extensibility is the name of the game with any type of platform that you have. I'm thankful that we can create our own and implement those. I'm going to hit save here. And I think that we should start looking at the controls here. Now, I'm going to watch the comments here. If you guys have any more thoughts, comments, questions about the theming system itself, please let me know. And I'm going to go with maybe a theme I haven't used in the past. I'm going to go with the SharePoint color for now. I think I'm happy with that. Okay. I'm going to open my tree view. And let's talk about individual modern controls here. Now let's go over here. Now one of the first controls that you might use here, I'm going to create a screen for each of these controls, I think. Just try to keep things separate. I'm going to call this label. The label screen, and that first screen name is horrible. I need to put the word screen in there. And I say it's horrible because you don't want to name things like screens, controls, fields, database tables that might be a reserved keyword within a language. And I think maybe my video camera has frozen up again, so let me see if I can fix that. Okay, here we go. Hopefully it works. There we go. I'm back. All right, we're on the label screen. Now, in the modern controls, it's not called a label. It's called text. Okay, so I'm going to put the modern control on the right side, and I'm going to go get the classic one. It's called a text label. And here we go. These are the 2 different types of controls. Now, I'm going to tell you right off, one of the things I just cannot live with the modern label. If you want to change the appearance of this text control, this modern label, we can change everything about the font. Thankfully, they finally added a border here. Okay. Now the color I went with was the SharePoint, so I'm gonna try to pick that. Now I just Oh, we also need to make sure it's solid. Otherwise, we're not going to see it. We have a top left border radius. Now that's something we don't have with the classic one. We have no border radius. At least I've never known us to have that. I'm always sort of appear to be a liar sometimes when for years things have been a certain way and I answer a question and it's like, oh look, they added that or they did something, you know. Okay, how do you change the background color? Or what's commonly in Power Apps called fill. Now, this is something they've added. They put a little check mark on the one that we're on. Isn't that nice? Uh, I sort of like that. That's interesting. It sort of leads me to believe I could select multiples. Uh, okay, and it doesn't. I was just checking and say, well, wait, did they? Because if I'm going to change the border radius bottom, all four of the, I might want to change all four of them at once. And on some classic controls, there'd be a border radius, and you'd change it. Sometimes it would change all four, but then you go over here, and there are four, and it only changed one or two. Oh man, my camera is something else today. Um, to the left side. Now I am okay. So it looks like my camera is working. Um, so straight butter says, "Can you move your camera to the left side?" I don't think that I can, to be honest. I mean, I've got certain things I can mess around with here. Let's see if I mean, I can do this. I'm on the left side, but that's probably not very helpful, is it? Um, yeah. So sorry about, oh, you know what the issue that I think that you're getting at is perhaps my big fat head was over this lower portion here. Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so these things down here, after I set up the border, here at the bottom, we have the border radiuses. But there's no way to change the fill or the background color of this. So let's go look for fill, and we can attest that it is not there. We got border color, but no background color, no fill. I don't know how you can live that way. I mean, there's always a a workaround, right? We could put a rectangle here or a container. Containers are probably better than rectangles at this point. For a long time, we didn't have containers. Um, so I don't know that it's that huge of a limitation, but it's so easy to work with a label. Why should I have to add a bunch of other things in order to get this work the way that I want to? But things change, and it looks like these monitor controls, one of the things they're trying to go for is to make it more web-like. Okay, probably more suitable for um, responsiveness. So if the dimension of the screen changes, it will respond to that. Yeah, thanks for letting me know that. Straight butter. I love your name. Uh, uh, okay. Does it seem like I'm moving at like 2 frames a second? It seems like it for me. Hopefully that's not too distracting for you guys. Okay, so here is the modern label on the right side. And again, it's called text. Now, in both of them, we have a text property. Okay, so let's, we see that we can select both, and I was going to go here and change the text, but I don't have it here, but I do have it here at the top. And so that's interesting that it happened that way. Okay, I can change both at once, but oh, this is a huge limitation. This is a huge bummer for me. You notice with the classic label, I can go, if you ever want to get your imperative properties are properties that start with the prefix on. Yeah. I might actually just hide my camera or take that off. Let's see if I can completely hide it. There we go. Yeah, if the FPS is that low, it's probably best that I just hide it. And yeah, in fact, I think I'm going to turn it off so there's no processing going to that. Okay, very good. So with a label, a classic label, you go over here on select, boom, I could have something happen. Now with this modern label, we have absolutely no imperative properties that we could put code in. And it's been a while since this label, so are they eventually going to add it? Like the background color? If they would give us everything that we've been relying on and have depended upon to create great applications and power apps. Like, what is going on? Why can't we have these vital properties? Okay, so I'm gonna add a, as you can see, this little star icon is tying into the theme that I picked. I'm gonna say color dot yellow and maybe give it a color dot black. I was sort of hoping for a, oh, great. Very good. The 5 there. The winner between these two, classic and modern, I'd say most definitely is going to have to be the classic. Okay. All right. So we've talked about the label. What modern control would you guys like to talk about now? And if I don't see any suggestions, I'm probably just going to go down this line here. Okay. So here's the modern button. Move that over. And then I'm going to type in button. And I'm going to go find the classic button here. Okay. So number one, you can see the size difference. And we've had this one for years. And you guys might be, I wonder if I should just try to make this big. Here we go. That's going to be better. Okay. So we've had this one, and you might look at it now compared to this and like, oh, that's big and clunky, But what's to keep us from making this one look exactly like that? It's sometimes I feel like it's one of my superpowers to make something pixel perfect. If a user or my boss or my client, whatever, wants something to look exactly a certain way, I feel like it's my superpower that I could probably get it to look exactly like something like a manual paper form they've been using for 20 years. I can make a screen look exactly like it. Not that I'm the only one that can do that by any means, but we all have our strengths and weaknesses, right? So what I was looking for was the border radius. There we go. So it's 10 by default here. Now, if I change that to 5, is it the same thing here? Now look at this. Border radius top left. It's blank. Why is it blank? Like, I sort of want to see the default value right there. So I could say, oh, it's 2, then I'm going to make this 2. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. Let's go with 2. And 2 seems to be a little too low. Let's go with 3. And what's great about making something pixel perfect here with Power Apps, you can just zoom right in. Back when I would create my own Windows controls, I'd have to take a screenshot and blow it up to 400 or 800% in Paint. Okay, so these have the exact same height. So this is 32, and there's the height of 32. But you notice that the classic one still looks a bit bigger. Okay, it does have a border by default of 2. Do we have a border over here? I would think so. Set that up to be 2. Make it solid. Now what's the default color here? There's border color. Okay. I was like, what? And look, it's blank. Isn't that nice? Okay, so if we want it to have something consistent with the color in the button, we can say self, which references the same control, dot fill. We could do that. But guess what? It's not called fill in a modern control. What is it called? Probably, let's see here. Color palette. Do we have? Okay. I think it's going to be under appearance, perhaps. Let's do appearance. Dot. No, I don't think that is. So if you see, wow, talk about a pain in the rear. We have an icon style, filled outline, if we were to put an icon in there. We have primary, secondary outline. So those were the different types of buttons we could pick. So if I made this secondary, it's going to use a different color. Now, it's funny, it doesn't allow us to pick a secondary color, but obviously Microsoft understands white, black, and shades of gray can be a secondary color for any color theme. What about an outline? Okay, that didn't really seem to change it too much. What about subtle? Yeah, that's very subtle. It has no border at all. Transparent, yeah. I'm going to go back to primary, and we do have, if I click on color palette, I'm not seeing anything there. Yeah, let's go back to border color. And since we're using the modern themes, let's use the modern theme. Okay, so we got app, we've got theme. There we go. Dot colors. Dot. Oh, look, there's a bunch of shades of our main color. Oh, it looks like they gave us a primary foreground. Oh, well, that's nice. That's nice of them to add that. Now, if it's been there the whole time, you guys need to tell me. I am having a senior moment. Okay. So now we do have a good border color. Now, if you select something, guys, if you ever want to know what the value of something is, go up here and if it's one word, you just double click on the word, okay, and it's going to select it. But if you have an expression, select the whole thing. And look at this. It's nice enough to actually show us what the value of that expression is. And it's telling us the data type, color. Okay, very nice. Now over here, we have a border of 2. Over here, we have a border of 2. And we've set up the color. And still, the classic one looks a little bigger. So between the two, things aren't very consistent. So in this case, if I wanted to make this look just like this, I would have to manually sort of change this a little bit. Okay, there we go. And I want to increase the border radius. That looks pretty close. Now, if I made it 5, that'd be too much. So I'm thinking it would be 4. So if I go down here and we wanted to provide the border radius here, I'm hoping that everything would look and stay the same there. There we go. Now the font is a little bigger. Okay. So in order to make this look just like this, we would have to lower the font size. And the font size is right here. And it's probably something like 12. But we don't know, because if we go over to the property, it's going to tell us 0. Okay, so which one is better between these two guys? Okay, so Salman says, one I haven't looked into is tab. Guess what? We're going to cover that one next. Now that somebody mentioned a specific control. So we'll do that one next. And I'm very excited about that tab control, by the way. Seems weird. The defaults are blank. Would be nice if they just showed it. Yeah, so this is something that I tell people is like, man, it just seems like it's half-baked.
or something, you know? Um, I like maybe they don't have um, as much resources devoted to the modern controls. I would imagine that you know, I don't know. Maybe it's based on a lack of feedback or something. But I'm hoping that eventually we'll get things that will make sense with these modern controls. Now I'm going to open up a tool here, and I'm going to see. You guys bear with me one moment here. Yeah, I thought. Um, Now between these two buttons, notice that the icons over here on this side look different. And if I go over here, so we'll notice, you'll know if you're working with modern controls or classic controls based on these little icons. You guys see that? They look, the modern ones look similar. Okay, so I want to point that out since that's the theme for today. Let's go look at the actionable properties or the imperative type of properties. For the modern control, we only have on select. Okay, if I click on the classic one, we only have on select. So I'm glad to see, I can't imagine having a button control you don't have an on select. Okay. Any drawbacks to using one over the other? Um, Now look at this. The classic one seems to give us more control. We can change the disabled color, press color, hover color. Over here, it doesn't seem like we have that type of control. So for this modern, let's go see if we can make this thing disabled. Okay, there, it's disabled. Now this is exactly what I would want a disabled button to look like, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I've never really sought to change this disabled color to anything except a gray like this, okay? So maybe we've never really needed these disabled colors. I'm going to make this disabled so we can see it, okay? But guys, if we wanted to, we have the control here. Okay, if I want it to be like really nice light blue, I could. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it looks right. But I don't think I would, if I went with the modern control, I don't know that I would really miss it. What would I miss? Okay, if I hover over the button, you see that it goes a little darker. It's been set up like that. And it seems like the modern one just has it built in. Okay, do we have any type of hover? Okay, here's appearance, base. Well, what? Yeah, okay, so the appearance is the type of, like we looked at this before. So we have that base color palette. I don't see anything about hover. I don't see anything about pressed. And for that reason, I'm out. For that reason, I'm going to name the classic button the winner. We have more control. I don't know that I'm really going to pick up anything that I really need over here by going with the modern button. I can make my classic button look just as cute as the modern one. Okay, now I'm going to call this the button screen. Okay, now unless you guys have any questions, comments, concerns about the button, I'm going to move on to the tab control. So I'm going to add a new screen here. Tab screen. Now, did we have a classic tab control? No, we did not. Now, how I implemented tabs in the past is I would use a gallery with buttons in it, and then I'd hide the lower 10% of it to make it look like tabs. But this tab control is really nice. Now, it's not without its frustrations and weirdness. Okay, so I can make this bigger, but it doesn't really affect how it operates. Okay, and I don't recommend making it big like this. However, something I want to show you guys is like what makes this control so nice is that it has an alignment property. So I could go from horizontal to vertical. You could use this as a menu or a submenu. Now, another thing I love about this, now let me just show you how it looks. This is a modern type of tab. Okay. Which is what we see here. Now, back in my day, back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, you know, tabs used to be very much more prominent, and they looked like buttons, and they were usually dark. Like if you selected one tab, the one tab would be very dark and had rounded color, you know, rounded corners and such. But here, it's very subtle. Okay, see how this tab right here, it just brings this underline over. Okay, so that's the modern way of doing tabs these days. So we get that in this. Now, I've actually tried to make my own menu control using this tab control, and it sort of works, but there are a few things that are very frustrating, and it usually involves the fields. So this thing acts almost like a form control, or you know, a control where we can list off records. So we can add in value. Well, it's using the value. There's item 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to show you the items. Look at this. Square brackets means it is a collection. Okay, you see square brackets. When you see curly braces, that means it's defining a record. That's just how the PowerFX language is syntactically. So we got item 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you don't name off, I'll format this a little bit. If you don't give these things names, this will just be called value. The field, this is, let's select it all. Okay, it's a table type of value. Now, I wish it would really tell you the true value, which is a collection. A table is not a collection. Technically, there's subtle differences, and I wish they were more clear on that, because if you create something, there's a table function. You could create a table and it would truly be a data type of table, and it would look sort of like a collection, have columns and rows, but then you try to use collection functions with it. You might notice that it will tell you in an error like, hey, you're trying to use a table as if it was a collection. You can't do that. Okay, I do see sometimes with viewers from Twitch, I just get some weird comments and spammy. So anyhow, so I'll select all this. It's a table, but I can open it up. Look what it does. Value. If you use a distinct function will give you distinct values, of course, but you're going to give it a data source and a field name, and it's going to give you a 1-column collection, and the column will be called value, no matter what it was underneath. Okay, so something I want to show you here, this is a collection, and what we could have been doing here, each item, let's say tab text. Okay, and when I have curly braces, I like to break them up over lines like this. And look what I do here. I can cut this, I can put it here, and that comma should be there like that. But you also might want to say tab screen. Let's say it would be screen 1. Maybe we're making this a menu system. Okay, so let's say screen 1 like that. Now, what happens if we ever change the name of screen 1? Now we have a literal value that doesn't get updated. You want to know what would work better? Is if we say screen1.name, and that's still a text, that's still text, still a string value, But if we ever rename screen 1, it will update it. Okay. Now, if they click on it, that first value, what we might want to do is say navigate to the tab screen. And we could also do things like this. Tab icon. And now we could say icon dot home. And we could use that somehow. Okay, just to show you how this might work. If you're going to write an application using this new modern tab control, I recommend that you use, if everything's going to be spelled out in code like this, like they had, then this is how I recommend setting it up. So we do have a label screen. And screens should have spaces in them for accessibility reasons. And here, let's do something like for a label, I'm going to say something like text. That looks about right. And we have a total of 4 screens. So let's get 2 more. Okay. Now you got to be careful whenever you're defining a collection like this. You got records. You need a comma in between them. Now the last one, you don't put a comma there, but you see that we're missing a comma here. Okay, so now it's all good. So instead of screen 1 here, I'm going to say apostrophe button screen. There we go. And I'm going to copy that, paste it there. And I'm going to say, do we have something like a button? No. A rectangle. I don't know. Let's just say redo. And then down here, we've got the current screen that we're on, which is tab screen. There we go. And I'm going to say maybe alarm. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this, and let's see how the tab control is affected. Guys, look at this. What the heck is going on? There's some internal something going on. And look at this. 2137, 2138. I'm sort of curious. If I were to copy and paste this tab control, you notice what it did? These are unique numbers. Is that not weird? Look at that. So there's some type of internal number. Now, if you guys work with Dataverse and you create choice, hopefully you don't use choice columns, but if you do, oh my goodness, guys, instead of choice columns, create tables, separate tables for choices instead. But if you have worked with choices in Dataverse, you'll notice that it will give like numbers specified to options. So that's what it sort of reminds me of. Now, this is where we need to go over here to edit. Okay, because we are going to need the tab text, and I'm gonna add it there. Okay. Ooh, I violated my own advice that I always preach. Modern controls and themes. And my motto is save early, save often. So I could have been here on a live stream, never hit save, and if I walked away and my session expired, I more than likely would have lost all my work. So I always tell people save early, save often. Now, I could click on these different screen names, but nothing happens. Okay, now we'll click on the tab, and let's go into, oh look, we have on select and on change. Now, what's the difference between on select? Now, in on select, the user is selecting. Okay, so that's when that would be invoked, when that would fire on select. Now, on change, that would fire if anything changed. And so what am I talking about here? If let's say we set up, do we have any type of default value? Yeah, we have default selected items. So we could have a dynamic value in here, like a variable. And if it changed, it would change which one is selected. Okay. Whether or not the user did anything, if that value changed, then this thing would be fired. Again, whether or not the user did anything or not. Okay. So that's the difference between those two. I'm going to go back to the comments. We got Mike. I've been putting classic text boxes and drop downs in containers to add drop shadows. Oh yeah, that's what I really love about the containers is they put those drop shadows in there. I love that new feature. And we've got Claudio. Hey Darren, bom dia. I hope that is a greeting. I don't know what bom dia means. Thank you for your effort for Pakistan. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for coming to the live stream. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's go into, now I don't want them to go off to some screen just if something changed, but if the user actually selected something different, what I would want to have happen is I'd want to navigate off to a different screen. So how are we going to tie into what was currently selected? So I've got self to reference the same control. And what do we have? We have selected and we have selected items. Now, if I see selected, I'm thinking in a tab, you're only going to have one selected. So I'm not even going to mess with selected items. But let's see how this works. So selected should give us the underlying values as if it was a record. Okay, look at this. There is the screen I want to go to. Now let's go to the other screens just momentarily. And I want to move things around a little bit. I want to rename screen 1, and I'm going to say modern theming, because this is the screen where we talked about modern theming. We could call it home. And I want to show you when we went over here and we looked at items. Look at this. That used to be called what, screen 1, right? And you notice that it changed it. Now, if we had static text there, if we didn't change it to be dynamic, it wouldn't have changed. So it goes to show you, it makes your code more maintainable if you don't have any literal values that have no chance of changing unless you come in here, intervene, and change it manually. Okay, just wanted to mention that. Now, I am going to make this tab that I'm sort of using this as a menu for this application. So I'll make this nice and tall. And you know what? Let's see. Can we change the fill? Wow, that's a big thumbs down. So I'm going to take your suggestion here, Mike Gillis. Okay, that's a pro move. Let's use a container. And if you want to change something in the background, let's change this to a nice light gray. My favorite light gray is like E5 all the way across. And you've got repeating values for the RGB. Well, that's a shade of gray, just in case you guys didn't know. All right, and what I'm going to do is make this smaller. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to paste it. Very nice. Now I'm going to move this over. Something like that. Let's go. let's utilize app formulas and create a little constant here. Okay, we don't have to use globals. We have a way to add our own constants with app formulas. So here I'm going to say fx gutter. I'm going to say equals. Let's go with 10. See how that looks. So for this container here, for its X and its Y, will be nice and consistent now. Look at that. And then here for our tab control, let's do the same thing. We have an X. Well, let's put a little bit of a gutter in there. A little bit of a, I guess in web terms, that's called padding. Well, no, that's not right. It would be margin. Margin, if you ever study CSS, cascading style sheets, so if you're a web developer or want to learn web development, you'd want to learn some CSS, and the spacing outside the object is called margin, and then the spacing or the padding inside is called padding. Okay. So we got gutter. And then I think this gray is a little too dark. I think what I'm going to do here is going to come up with my own gray color. And I'm going to say color value. And inside of double quotes, we're going to have a pound sign. And instead of E5, I'm going to use F5s. So I'm going to use that. And look at what we have here for color. See, this is a literal value. Okay, now it's dynamic. What's great about dynamic type of values is typically you only have to change them in one place. And if you've got a large application, that's a huge time saver. Now for this tab control, I want it to take up the space of this container. And this container, I want to use that regular. I want to have a little drop shadow there, okay? So I'm showing you guys how to build your own menu right here. Okay, good morning, bom dia. Okay, so bom dia means good morning. Now, is that, what language is that? Bom dia. I'm going to have to admit here, Claudio, bom dia sounds a lot cooler than good morning. In fact, I might start using it. See people in the morning, bom dia. If you have SharePoint list group on a person column, how do you populate the dropdown? Okay. How would you do that? I recommend that you don't use a person column, but if you have no choice, then what you would do is you would tie in to the Office 365 connector and use that. And you could do like a search user, that type of thing. If we have time later on, we can, now I want the focus to be modern controls and themes, but if we do a screen on, let's see, you said SharePoint list, blah, 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 the drop down. For a people picker, which I think is what you're describing there, I would recommend a combo box because you got the searching capability and you have the capability of putting in the person's photo. So if you'd like me to, perhaps the next control we'll look at is the modern combo box. How about that? We'll talk about it there. Okay. Now this tab control inside of this container, I wanted to fill up, take up most of the space inside the parent. Okay, so how would I do this? Well, we do that with the width and the height. So we have the width here. Now you don't want to use literal values. So you're going to say parent.width. Now that's a little much, huh? It seems like we don't want it to be that wide. So let's subtract self.x. Okay. And I would probably multiply that by 2. See now that there's a nice little gutter on the side, little padding on the side. And then we would do the same thing for the height. But instead of width, it would be height. And instead of X, it would be Y. Okay, so if I clicked on the container and I made the container bigger, if we click on the tab, look, it filled that out. And we could do the same thing for the container. So the width, we might want this to be sort of responsive in design. So we could say parent.width divided by 4. So if the width of the screen became really wide or really narrow, it would sort of go in there. Okay, so you could do something like that. Let's do maybe 6. Okay, sort of like that. Now for the height, I want this to be sort of like what we did here with the tab control. If you look at the height, we set parent.height and we subtract, and that's going to work perfectly for this container. Here we go. It's going to save this. Now watch what happens when we change the dimensions of the screen itself. Okay. I don't like these pop-ups. All right, so let's go with this. Okay. You guys like that? I do. Very nice. So what I'm going to do is what you could do is you could copy this. Let's name this container something like CNT for container. We'll call this the menu container. How about that? Now, it would be best if we created a control out of this, and I don't want this to be about object-oriented programming and all the considerations that you got to take into account when creating a component. So I'm not going to do that. For the tab, you know, three characters for a prefix for a control name. Tab works out great. And I'm going to say tab menu. So I want to make sure I'm using meaningful names. Now, look at this. We can just copy this. And I'm going to go modern theming. I'm going to paste it here. And boom, it works great. Now, what happens if I were to copy the code? This is a new feature. Let's go over to the second screen here, and we could paste the code. Boom. Isn't that sort of cool? Now, you're like, why is that cool? It just did the same thing. Okay, well, let's look for a moment with a text editor. I don't need that anymore. And I could paste that. This is what we copied, guys. Isn't that so? We can modify all this stuff as code. I think that's just wonderful. That's so cool. Because you could copy and paste this code over to a code editor of your choice, and or you could create a code generator, and you could copy code from a code generator over here in the Power Apps, and you could set up your own, you know, create some code that creates the apps. You could, and Matthew Devaney had a video out there of he would actually construct PowerFX code. I believe he did it in his app formulas to create something that looked like a form within the Power Apps application. That was very cool. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the button screen. I'm going to paste that there. Okay, so now we should have a nice working menu. Now, is that true? I just clicked on tab screen. Am I on the tab screen? We are. How do we know what screen we're on? Well, that's a great question. I'm going to show you guys a new modern control here. And let's do something like this. Okay. You might want this to take up the screen like that. And how do we want to handle this? Well, I sort of like things to be dynamic and responsive. Now, I know we're not using responsive containers. I'm showing you guys how you could do some responsive design and coding without using responsive containers. Whether you want to do that or not. Let's see here. We'll go with, I was looking for a property I don't see there. Okay. This control menu container, I think what I'd like, instead of doing parent width divided by 6, is that we could create a constant that this control could look at. So this is the header control, and it's decent. I don't think that it is as nice as the header component that I've created for my apps, my templates, but it's not bad if you don't want to create your whole one and you don't have access to mine or someone else's. I do know for the Y, I want to tie into that FX gutter. But that's not the property I wanted. I want to click on Y. There we go. Okay, so it's there at the top. The property I was looking for was the border radius. Do we have any type of border radius? You know what? We could do that with yet another container and have a drop shadow. And I sort of want to do that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that though. So let's go up here. I'm going to go to this container that has this. Okay, I'm going to copy that because I'm going to go up to the app formulas and I'm going to create a menu width. FX menu width equals. Now notice we can't say parent.width. Okay, or you know, what about the screen? Can I say screen? Well, there is a screen size. Is that going to give us what we want? What we've got here, we do have app dot design height and design width. Okay, I'm going to go with design width. And then I'm going to select that. Let's see what that is. Is it going to tell us? It doesn't look like it is. We do need a semicolon at the end. So that's probably what's going on there. It's not going to tell us. If I select this whole thing, is it going to tell us? Probably not. I'm going to double click on that, Control C, go down to this container, and instead of that, I'm just going to paste that in there. And it looks like exactly the same thing. But now that we have something up here like this control can now depend upon that. Okay, so for its X, I could say FX gutter, multiply that by 2, and then we'll add in the full width of the menu, and that should be right on for the X. And then the width will be parent width, and we'll subtract self.x, and then we'll also subtract FX gutter. Okay, how about that, guys? Do you like that? Now, if I change things, you notice that it responds. Let's give it some type of a phone layout. Okay, everything seems to be going just fine. Very nice. Now, the one of the reasons I want to put this header control because I know it shows the screen name. Okay, I'm going to copy this control. I'm going to paste it on each screen. There we go. So now when I run it and I test it, okay, now we are navigating just fine. So I clicked on the label screen and it says label screen. If I click on modern theming, it says modern theming. But notice that this tab control isn't updating itself, huh? So if you're interested, we can fix that. Okay. How would we fix something like that? Well, we do know within a tab control, let's see here. What could we rely on in these tab controls? We could set up a default selected items. That's what we could do. And for default selected items, we need to select the one of the screen that we're on. Okay. So what I want to do here is I'm always going to recommend the proper way of doing things. Okay, guys. So if we look at the items, look, how many places do we have this now? Well, we've copied and pasted this control 3 times and it's in 4 places. Maybe we shouldn't have it. So if we want to update this menu and we got 20 screens, we have 20 places we need to update it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and you guys should be making use of this app formulas. Okay, FX app menu, or we'll just call it menu items. Okay, I'm going to paste, and you always need a semicolon at the end. So now here are all our menu items. So now I could just go around to all of our menu items. Okay, Control A to select everything, Control V to paste. We'll need to do that for each of them. Items, Control A, Control V. Control A, Control V. Items, Control A, Control V. Okay, so if we ever wanted to change our menu items, now we just go to app formulas and it's all in one place. That is a programming concept called dry. Don't repeat yourself. And we were repeating ourselves quite a bit, weren't we? Okay, so there's a huge upside for me putting that in there, okay? Because now I could look at this collection and do a lookup. Let's say FX selected menu item. What would this be? I would probably want to do a lookup on the FX menu items. Okay, we got parameters in here for the lookup. And we're going to go search for a specific menu item. Now, what's the criteria that evaluates to a Boolean yes, no, true, false? That is the second parameter that you need to give a look to the lookup function. Well, you know what? I know the fields that I can reference: tab text, tab screen, and tab icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up the tab text and make sure that's the same thing as app.activeScreen.name. And that's going to give me, if you give lookup 2 parameters, it's going to give you a record. Well, that's great because we got 4 records here, and we want to give that to the tab control. And the app object knows what the active screen's name is. And down here, we got something to match up. Now, the question is, could we have said tab screen itself and not even have the dot name? Thankfully, it does look like that would work. Sometimes things work programmatically the way you would expect in Power Apps, and sometimes they don't. So I'm glad to see that it seems like it might work. So we'll leave it like that, because there are times when you might want the tab text to be something a little different. Now, this expression, this named formula that we've set up here, we want to copy the name of it, because on each of these tab controls, we need to go in the default selected items and put it there. Default selected items, put it there. Now, do you guys notice the repetition? Items, there was a V in there for some reason. You notice all the repetition? I'm having to go back to every screen. Well, what would have saved us is if this was, we made it into a component. So, not in this video, but maybe a different video. Maybe we could do a follow-up and show how we would take this and make it into a component. Now, I do have actually lots of videos on how to create components. Now, what's a component? Well, you see this little tab over here, components? You create your own control if you want. And you could drop it on all your screens. That would be one way of cutting down on the repetition. But that is a more intermediate to an advanced topic that I have a whole workshop or a mini course on that. You could ask me about if you want to know more about that. Okay, so Now, does this work the way that we want it to? Label screen? Oh, button screen? Okay, this thing is working great now. I like it. So that is how, number one, you could initially create a menu system for your app. And also, we've learned about containers, drop shadows. We've learned about the modern, the tab control, the container, the header. So I'm going to look over here in the comments. And Mike Gillis says, nice. And we've got Abdul says, hello, Darren from India. Well, hello. Hello from Orlando. Hello from Vietnam. It's so great talking to people all over the globe. This is wild. Back in my day, Claudio, back in the day, there were so many variables to store this information. I see using formulas that makes everything easier and cleaner. Yes, it really does. And guys, they have updated this they gave us this. For years, we didn't have this, or it was stored in different places. But here we have it on the side, which is great. And here's all of our collections. Here's all of our component variables. Here's all of our context variables, name formulas. Okay, global variables. Look, I'm not using a single global variable. Guys, don't use global variables unless you have to, unless you've got a good reason to. Well, what do I use instead of global variables? Name formulas or context variables, variables that have a scope just for one screen. I would contend that the more global variables you have, you're opening yourself up for lots of little bugs that might come up. For a while when I was first learning Power Apps, I would just use globals because they're so much easier to use, right? There's the set, the 3-letter function set. So easy to declare and put a value into a global variable. Or update context, you got to put square brackets and all that type of stuff. But global variables lend themselves to the possibility of bugs, where context variables seem to get the job done very well. Okay, and that's what I recommend. So, yeah, I love the fact that we have app formulas, and we could do, these are named formulas. Then we also have user-defined functions that we could put in here, things that we could take in parameters. But the drawback to app formulas, notice there's no on formulas, because if you don't see on, you can't put imperative code in here. So everything that we use in here is declarative type of code. What about the function notify? Nope, you can't put notify in here because that is imperative. It is an action or a behavior type of code. If I say app design width, that's declarative. That's set, or it dynamically changes, but you can't modify that, So things like clear, collect, clear, patch. I mean, there's all kinds of functions that we can't use here in app formulas. You could write your own functions that are imperative by using components. But again, that's a topic for a different day. Yeah. All right. So this is almost looking like an app. I didn't really mean to make an app, but I guess that's what commonly do here. And if you're smart, instead of me just creating some new screen, you pick the screen that's most developed. I do need a star in here though. Let's put a star in here. Let's add a default tab. I love this tab control. Great job on this, Microsoft. Love it. Okay, it's a winner. Definitely use it. It has its issues from time to time. And if we were creating a component, I'd point those out to you. But but we don't have a classic control to contend with this. This is amazing. You'd have to use a gallery and some other controls in there to sort of do that. I am going to duplicate this screen. Okay. And this is going to be combo box. Screen. Okay. Well, we don't want the tab control on. No! What just happened? Now, all my controls seem to still be here. That was weird, guys. That was very weird. All right, so we saw this thing here. It says combo box screen. Now I'm not going to go in here and try to add the combo box screen to this menu because it's all in app formulas. Let's go in here. Let's add in a new screen. You know something that would be cool, guys? I love this. Let's add a label. I'm going to show you a secret that I'm not trying to prove to anybody I'm special here, but I haven't seen this anywhere. But this is really cool. Like you add a new screen like this, and you'd be like, maybe you'd want to know if it's in here or not, or make it obvious. Okay, so let's make this really obvious. There we go. We're going to pick the McDonald's colors and make this really big. No, 20. Very good. And I'm going to say not in menu. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is for the visible, I'm going to go do a lookup. And I'm going to see if it's there or not. We can do that with is blank. Is blank. Let's go do a lookup in the FX menu items where the what's the field? Tab screen, where that equals app.active screen. And let's go look at the tab. What was it called? Tab something. Tab text. That's what I was looking for. So the is blank, sometimes you want to give it a value. So if I gave it I did a lookup with just 2, which you might be tempted to do. I'm rhyming now. Is blank works well with strings, not so much with objects and records. Okay, so that's why I'm giving it the tab text. So it's going to be more consistent, or actually work. The fact that we give the lookup the third parameter, which would give it a string return value. And if it's blank, then this is going to show up letting us know, hey, it's not in there. Do you see? It's not visible on this screen once we paste it over here because it's already in the menu. Okay, so check this out. If I go up here to modern theming, and I really like this theme because I customize this button so much, and I just love this, how I set the screen up, and I make a copy of this screen. I think I just made a fool of myself. Okay. Oh, I didn't change over to the copy. Okay. If it zooms in like this, hit Control-0. Oh, look at that. We're alerted right away. Hey, you just added this great new screen. Did you know it's not in your menu? You might want to add it. Isn't that cool? All right. And I mean, if you go up here and add a new screen, it's not automatically going to be there. I wish that Microsoft, if you're listening, could we create our own templates? That would be amazing. Like I could go over to a screen and say, hey, make this a template. So if I go over to new screen, everything's all defined. You know, they've got all kinds of cool stuff here. Why can't I add my own? Just like I can do with the modern theming. Why can't I do that, Microsoft? Okay, so we have a screen 5 here. But, you know, here's a combo box screen. If I duplicate this screen, it's going to tell me if it's in the menu or not. I love it. Am I the only person here that think that that's cool? All right, I'm going to copy this. And this is going to be called combo box screen. And I'm going to put it there. Compose. Look at that, guys. We're on the combo box screen, and now we don't have that label. I love it. Love it. Okay, so let's get down to combo boxes, shall we? So I'm going to type in combo box, if I can spell. And the modern combo box will be on the right side. Combo box classic will be on the left side. Okay. So far, just visually, what I like about the modern, let's make this proper looking here. Visually, this looks a little large and clunky, but I like color. I like the fact that we got a little bit of color in here. Okay, there's our color that just shows up. If I select one, item 2. If I select one over here, item 2. I sort of like that. It shows me item 2 in with a little bit of a background color. What if I do item 2 and item 3? Well, is this combo box set up so I can do multiple selections like I can with the classic? Let's see here. Allow multiple selections. Yeah, I would expect that to be in a combo box. Okay, we got item 2. Here's item 3. Now, I have noticed people having issues. So with once they're selected, how they appear, like maybe only one is shown. So perhaps they've fixed that. I sort of like this background of that. Okay. What are the big things about the combo boxes that you'd want to have in there? Let's pull in that connector I told you guys about. So if you want a people picker, I would recommend that you go in here and add a connector, and it's called Office 365. I don't know how they're gonna handle this since they renamed O365 to M365. I'm just gonna say 365. How about that? There we go. Office 365 users. So we'll add that. And I'm going to get out of full screen mode. And typically what I do for the items for the data sources, I'll say Office 365 users. And we can say search user. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Okay, here's all of our users. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Okay, so what you're noticing here, guys, if you ever get a combo box drop down, it's got a bunch of blank values. What you need to do is go over to fields, and I was showing the city. Okay, so let's put in here for the primary text, let's use display name. In the search field, that would be display name as well. Now we could put a person type of thing, so we got an image. Now, why isn't it allowing me to tie into that? I don't know. Let's see here. Secondary text. Maybe you want somebody's email address to be in there, so I'll say mail. Okay, there we go. I'd like to see the pictures there. I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm going to change that somehow, some way. Anyhow. So we got that. Now, what we could do is we could use this over here for the modern instead of just item 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we got that. Now, how does this handle it? Let's go over to fields. Add. Okay, here we go. We want the display name. What else do we want in here? Maybe their mail. Let's see how it handles this. Okay, I like it. Now I'm not getting anything with their email addresses. Do we have the ability to show things like over here? We could say, hey, show 1, 2, or a person. We don't have that over here. So I don't know that the mail is really helping us out. So we'll just do display name for now. Okay. And Sal Manan says the template screen would be a good idea. Kind of things that go into my remember to check if this is possible. Yeah. I think eventually we'll get that. Hopefully. I guess it would probably be far in the future, but I'm hoping eventually they'll allow us to do that. That would be amazing. Okay. Um, so that's how you would set up a people picker. And I'm going to tell you right now that one thing that you're going to have to deal with if you're not using a form would automatically put it in there for you. Now, I don't recommend using forms. In my opinion, they're sort of like training wheels. But if you like them and use them, I don't, it's just my opinion. Don't let my opinion offend you. If they're working for you, keep using them, nothing wrong with that. So we've got default selected items, which let's go here. Let's go look. And now we don't have a default. We only have default selected items. Okay, so that's one big difference there. So with the classic combo box, you've got allow multiple selections. And if you turn that off, then you want to use default. You turn this on, then you'll be using default selected items. So I almost like the fact that they simplified it. Whether you allow multiple selections or not, you just use this one property. And then what you'd want to do here is if, let's say, we had a record and we saved it, we come to the screen, we want to bring that record up and make the whatever was selected here in the past come up. Then you'd want to, let's say if we had a record, like a local variable called record, and we would say dot, selected person. Okay. Or if that was, in the case of the Office 365 users, you'd want to say Office, you search for the user, or let's see here. Yeah, you want to do a search user. And let's say in the database, you just stored their intra ID, okay? Or you stored their email address. You could pass that in there, and it would return the person object, and it would be selected there. Okay, so that's something I want to make you guys aware of whenever you're working with either of these combo boxes. Now, what do you guys think? I'm a little on the fence on which one I would use. I think I would go along with, for let's say a new project, if based on that project, some things are more important than other things. I've been on projects where the visuals, the styling, the theming, the oohs and the ahs were like one of the most important things about the app. In that case, I'm probably going to try to stick with the modern controls as much as possible, but it's more about the features and less bugs. I'm going to lean more towards the classic probably for another year or so, I wish that there was more colors. Why is it selecting everything? I definitely don't want that. Let's see here. Instead of that, let's use something like radio or sample. Yeah, combo box sample. Let's use that for now instead of talking about users. Okay. I just wish there was more color here. At least have the background color of that that chevron coming down. Now the question is, can we change that? Fill darker, fill lighter, outline. I doubt that's going to give us what we want. We do have a border. Okay, well let's see what this thing looks like with a border. Does it? I'm sure it would give us some color here. Okay, so let's go into app dot theme colors dot primary, and we got to make sure we have a solid or something other than none. And what is our border thickness? We'll say 1. Okay, that gives us more of the color I was looking for. The modern controls definitely look more elegant. Yeah. And what I do with perhaps for my combo boxes, I wish we had like a border radius that would really help us out here to make it not look so big and clunky. Something that I do, and that was not a no pun intended for do, is that I don't make it like really big. I would at the most make it a height of 40, but if there's not going to be a lot of text in there, I try to size it down so it doesn't look so big and clunky. And I think that would fit the bill. But yeah, this is nice. This is more elegant. So I'm a little on the fence, but I think they've fixed a lot of the issues that I saw earlier on. And if it wasn't for that, I'd probably still stick with the classic one. I'm thinking I might want to go with the modern one here as the winner. Okay. Now, what did you guys think of the topic today? Did you guys like this format where a lot of times when I go live, I do, I build out an app, typically. But here, we covered a topic here on the live stream and interacted with you guys with your comments. And, we covered a topic rather than building an app. But it also looks like we built an app as well because we got our menu and our theming. Let me know if you guys like this particular format for a live stream. You guys' input or lack thereof determines on if I change things up, or if I improve things. So let me know what you guys think. So very nice. Now I do have a request here for you.
Out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated.
Yeah. All right. So what would you guys like to see next? Would you like to go over, let's say, more of these modern controls? Yeah. Are there any other topics that you guys would like to see a workshop on? So every Fridays we have a workshop, 1 p.m. to 5. And just to let you know, I do have this school community. I think most of you out here, watching the live stream are a part of the community. Now, I have almost 20,000 subscribers, where here in the members, I got 1.7 or 1,700 members. So obviously, we're working about 10%. So a lot of times within the videos that I publish, the live streams and everything on YouTube, I'll get comments and questions, which I do appreciate. Please don't stop doing that. But the community is a better format where you can post a question. I could go into it and you could post screenshots. You can ask whatever questions. It's a much better format for me to help you guys. Also, I do have a lot of free resources out here. I just added basics of Power Apps. Some people were asking about the basics, and I've got some good stuff out here. And I'm currently recording a whole new series of videos where I go over the basics very thoroughly in depth. But my whole crash course is free out here, guys. So the 10 things that you must know before building your first Power Apps app, and also building an app in a day, those are the 2 core modules of the crash course. And then we have other things here, of course. Um, but join the community. Now, every Friday, yesterday we talked about using APIs and custom connectors. Okay, so if you go over here to the workshops, this is a membership. So we have like a little mini course or a workshop every Friday that lasts generally about 4 hours. And for a $25 membership fee, you get access to all of this stuff. All these little mini courses. Solution and pipelines is what we did last, the one before yesterday. So we have a total of 26. And so you should be seeing each year. Now we started, I don't remember the date. Maybe I've got the date in here when we started. I could find that, but maybe February or March is when I started. So each year there'll be a new one of these, and we'll have about 50 workshops per year. So we're going to have all kinds of good stuff to look at. But yeah, take a look at this. So we did different types of apps for the first two. Here's approval workflows. If you want to be a master at designing relational data, which I find that's probably the biggest thing. If you don't have a traditional software development background or, a background in databases, I would recommend that you watch something like this and become really good at designing data. You don't want to put all your data into one database table. You're going to have a problem. You're going to have a disaster on your hands for that project long term, either with delegation or some other functionality issues. Okay, here's a whole workshop on basics. Here's a whole workshop on collections. Freelancing, UI, UX design, complex patching. I share a lot of my secrets in there. Creating dashboards, template, like if you're going to build your own app template, what are all the features that you'd want in there? We go over the app formulas and that in workshop 12, mastering color. There's a lot of good stuff in there if you're going to create a color palette for your app. Modernizing your app. Now you might think that's about modern controls, but what that is if you have a an app that you've done in the past, perhaps it was months ago or years ago, and you want to move all your code from app on start over to app formulas. Things like that. That's what that workshop does. And we have a whole workshop on delegation. Here we go back into more common template features added onto that. Here's the sports fantasy app, org chart app. This deals a lot with user profiles and getting at people's direct reports or who they report to, using Copilot to create multiple tables apps, which is a great new feature if you guys haven't seen that before. Dynamically creating data sources. From app on start to formulas. So there's more of a deep dive in that. Checklist inspection app, offline disconnected. That was an amazing one. If you're using SharePoint and doing a disconnected app, it's really it can get quite complex. I'll just leave it at that. But we go into all that there. Creating components, solution pipelines, and the one we did yesterday was the APIs and custom connectors. We created a custom connector to talk to AI. We also did stuff to find out random dad jokes. That was sort of cool. Yeah. So that's my tech workshops, and it's only $25 a month, and you could cancel at any time. You could come in, pay the $25, get access. You could watch all of them in one day, if that was possible, right? And if you didn't want to have to pay that every week, then you just cancel, Then we got a community on the templates. So we're building a new template with tons of new features in it. Sort of like the Jumpstart Kit 2.0. I do have one here called the Microsoft Stack. This is completely free. Now the template, this is $25 membership as well. Okay. And then the Microsoft Stack, that's completely free. You can join that. I do have my accelerator program. That's my main flagship offering. Probably has most of my content that if you're not in the accelerator, you haven't seen yet. And just wanted to tell you guys about the communities. If you like my content, how I explain things, you guys will probably want to be a part of these different communities, at least this one free one here. Okay. And I do have a link down below. And guess what? You can go in here in the chat and send me a message. You could email me as well, but yeah, so there's our support email address. Okay. And these are pinned here at the top. So very nice. So it looks like Spanish. If my wife was in the room, I'd have her translate that for me. I watch less live over the summer, but usually catch replays. Okay, very good. Yeah. Very nice, guys. And really what you should be thinking about right now, which video should you watch next, right?
So you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry, click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video.